had noise cancellation on and it made it sound like I was going deaf. So let's dive right in and kick off our cluster. So we're going to pick up kind of where we left off last time, mostly Power BI today, looking at our sanction zone. Probably going to check on the health of our nightly jobs too. But there was something really cool announced at Ignite that I definitely want to explore, which is that native Databricks connector for Power BI that supports Azure Active Directory pass-through. So we're using mount points and service principal keys now, so we don't have to really worry about pass-through. But I'm going to play around with it anyway, just so you can see how it works, and eventually we might dig into that. So that's interesting. Let's see what this was complaining about. Okay. So that's new. So let's look at what's going on here. So this is coming in as a string, and it's expecting an array of strings, which is interesting. So that's happening on toasts, items, and user. So what we want to do is we want to see the actual data types of our existing table. So we'll go ahead and do a run all here. And while that's firing up, we'll go over to our Power BI. And so I'm probably going to make a net new report just to play around with this. There's another new feature that lets you copy paste visuals that's probably going to help us sort of merge the two models, but we'll deal with that next. So I'm going to click Get Data. And then somewhere the actual get, there we go. Somewhere the Get Data interface will pop up. So if we're on our latest version of Power BI, sure enough, Azure Databricks, the long-awaited Azure Databricks native connector. So we're still going to need our server host name. So let's do this. say. So we'll do Azure Active Directory. Okay, so that's not a valid domain name. So let's go back. The host name of the Databricks server. So I haven't read any documentation for this. I don't know if you can tell. So example.azuredatabricks.net. This is not what we want. I think this is still using the Spark connector. Yeah. Okay, so we want it, it's for the cluster. That's my bad. That's my bad. Okay, so we want the that's not it. It's under JDBC. Got it. There we go. So this is our host name. So that should have worked. I think it was just having the extra HTTPS in there. That was the problem. And then the HTTP path comes straight from here. Perfect. Okay, invalid user agent entry. Okay, so let's go back through this. We'll do an access token. Let me move this back over here. Yeah, so I think we could set this up with I love sneaky kitty cats, huh? Okay, so we could set it up with AID. I think in this case the access token is fine. Just for this proof of concept. Let's go ahead and check. So yeah, and they recommend Azure Active Directory authentication. So let's make sure. Okay, so we've given the app access. So if we want to go ahead and pull in the Azure Active Directory role assignment, see how we have our access principal there, or sorry, our service principal, like our app. So what we want to do instead is add in the actual Databricks contributor. So I'll just make myself an owner. And we could be more granular, but I'm going to go ahead and make myself the owner. Okay, and then that's saved. So let's double check our work here. So we can see myself as owner. So then if I go in here and we do the authentication step, why don't you like that? PowerBI can be so weird, but also so awesome. So we might need to restart the app to let it pick a different access option. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I swear we'll get back over to our Bronze Zone notebook. I haven't forgotten about that. So let's start PowerBI again. Nice. So the reason I did this is because we have this DF now. And so what we're going to do once we get connected on PowerBI is display the data frame. And remember that interface shows these types. So we can see like badges is coming in as a struct. If we went down to toasts or items or users, one of those fields that's broken. Yeah, so we can see items as an array. So I bet in the data that's being stored in the Delta Lake, it's actually being treated as a string instead. So what we'll probably do is just change the schema of this table on the data lake, and then it will adjust just fine. But for now, I want to play with these new toys. Okay, so let's let this load. So we're going back into Databricks, and the goal here is again to let it see if we can auth using Active Directory, and if not, we'll just go ahead and move on to using the token. But the best practice is definitely to use that token, or the opposite, Azure Active Directory, not the token. Really, the token is in a sense no better than what we did in that previous sort of hacky connection via the Spark connector, where we were just creating our URL and like a text editor and sort of massaging it to interface with Databricks. The whole point of having a native connector is getting the Azure Active Directory pass-through, and that way, for instance, you would get row-level security natively in your supports in the same way that you configured on your data lake. Let's see if it'll play ball. Please specify a value. Okay. Bizarre. So let's see if this is a known issue. I'm not seeing a way for it to let us force it to use the token access, so it's kind of weird. We could also go into maybe the transform data interface and do it from there. If we do new source. And this is an open preview, so I'm not going to make any quick judgments here. Behaving strangely. And let's try direct query too, just due diligence. Yeah, but you can kind of tell, like, even with the fact that it doesn't think we're filling stuff in, but then you select it all and suddenly it's happy, it's kind of bizarre. So I'm going to do a quick search for this. But I'm certainly not going to stop the stream and reboot my computer. So we did all that. Yeah, so this is all old. So this is as recent as October, and you can see this is from a couple years ago. So these people are still going through the old school way. And this doc set has been updated to use the new native connector. So it's just interesting. So hostname HTTP path, and then yeah, everything else is set up correctly. So I can't tell right now if it's just having trouble hitting the cluster because of the HTTP pass-through issue, or if it's an authentication issue. As you can see, our cluster is set up, you know, as it should be. You know, this is expecting a token, as you can see here, but that shouldn't be affecting us. So I'll play around with this and I'll come back next time with some more thoughts. I'll go ahead and save this tab. For now, what we want to do is go ahead and compare these two data frames. So let's pivot to debugging our Bronze Zone notebook. So we can have, let's call it just df delta. Remember, you can do spark.table to access any of our tables. In this case, this is not registered with SQL, so we would need to go ahead and read it in. So we want to do it's going to be a spark.read, and then we'll have a format of delta, and then we should be able to specify our read string. Let me look at this documentation real quick. From the Spark API. So our goal, like I said, is to go ahead and read in from the lake. It should be similar to how we read in from the raw zone. If you remember way back when. So Spark data frame reader. Yeah, so I think it's just .load. It's actually dot. Yeah, spark.read and then load. Yep, okay. That's what it is. So then we'll provide this same raw delta path. Cool. And so what we want to look at is, let's look at toasts first. So under field toasts and toasts. So toasts is a struct, items is an array, and then up here, toasts is also a struct and items is an array. So that's interesting. I wonder if we can do a little hack around here. Because schema evolution wouldn't work because they can't, otherwise it would have automatically done that for us for the string type and the array type of string. It's just interesting because I was expecting these schemas not to match. And even if we were to do like df delta dot schema and print that out, and then if we did df dot schema, yeah, we can see they're a little different, but none of this has names really. Let's do a diff checker. It's unfortunate that this is all Scala types. I'd hope if I could use the mouse. Yeah, so they don't seem too different. And let's go ahead and treat this as the changed one. So of course, without any structure, it's all going to be changed. I don't know what I expected. So let's see if we can do a better comparison here. So we looked at toasts and toasts for items. Let's look at user. So I'll fold these up. Come on. I guess it doesn't want to click today. That's fine. So user is just the field. Username, user avatar, URL. Interesting. So these match up. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this is part of why it's best practice is to store your schema in a fixed way. Right now we're using schema inference and basically just reading in from JSON. So what we could do is we could provide a, I think you can just throw in a dot schema here. And then we'll do, we'll do this object instead. Then we'll throw another dot in there. And so this should yell at us. That's bizarre. So this enforced the same schema as the delta table on our raw data. So let's see if when it tries to write, it still gets upset. Cool, so that's fixed. So let's talk back through what we did. We just forcibly used a schema from the existing delta table to enforce the new data coming in to conform to it. So what we want to do is sort of harden that so that we're not reading in the delta schema first. So what we'll do is go ahead and write this out. And let's go ahead and make, I know it's been a while since we've had to make a worker notebook, so let's go ahead and do that over there. So we can clone this. Not under VDUG. Where do I even put these? Oh yeah, we're in like episode 1,000,000 at this point. I don't even know. I'm just gonna refer to it by date, and that'll be fine for everybody. Okay, and so we'll go ahead. So since this is a new notebook, it's going to have a different namespace. So we got to rerun our imports. We got to rerun our little parameter utilities, our widgets, all that cool stuff. Let's get our raw paths. And so what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and write this out to our Delta Lake, or our data lake, this schema object. So let's just go up here. And I don't even think we need this widget, so I'm just going to clean all this out. Definitely don't need this. Don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. I might keep this in here for testing. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna have schema is equal to df delta dot schema. Let's go ahead and add a path to the schema too. So untapped raw schema. And we'll put this under so that should be good to go. And then run this again. So we've got that. And then what we'll want to do is save it off. So we'll do a, I think we can do this in dbutils. We'll do a put. Let me look at how we did that for the raw zone real quick. Over here in bronze, so yeah, so we just did this. So I'll steal this. So we want this as a string, so I'll just cast it, that's fine. I thought it was going to do that for me. Cool. So now, if we do I wonder if we can provide, I'm going to look at this real quick. I wonder if we can provide a path to the schema instead of having to ingest it ourselves. So I've always pulled in the object first, but that would be nice. Let's actually just search for schema here. stuff that's irrelevant. So it's interesting. Let's look for dot schema. DDL formatted string. Yeah, ours isn't DDL formatted. That's interesting. Let me look at something real quick. Because I've done this before in another repo. But I have a funny feeling. Let's just go ahead and try it on screen so you guys can watch me screw up. But if we tried to do, let's call it we can just steal this. This is going to be a dot get, or what is it, dot. I really thought there was a dot get. One second. Let me look at my existing stuff, like I said. So when it's stored as this struct type, like we saw over here, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, and Python isn't going to want to get it back and be able to infer that this is what we're talking about. So we need to save it as an object. So what we might do instead is store it in that DDL format. I just want to check real quick to see if that's strictly necessary for what I'm trying to do. But hopefully it makes sense why we're doing this schema work in the first place, instead of just bringing in everything as raw like we have been historically. Because it really does make quite a bit of difference, especially when you're dealing, like you saw with Untapped. It's not like we were collaborating with them on, what the improvements to their API were going to be, right? Like all of a sudden it just shows up and now it's broken. Oh, I know what we could do. Yeah, this is what I wanted. It's just this little piece of code. So you can make a struct type. It's part of the struct type library. Let me paste it in here. You can make a struct type from JSON. So let's go ahead and add that to our imports. So we're going to import our struct type. Cool, so that's available for us. And then this, I'll go ahead and I'll just follow our existing naming convention and call this head. And so what I want is fs.head. And what we have to do is provide the number of bits there. that's the thing that I was missing. So head is the same as get. We just have to know the number of bits or have an approximation. And so what we tend to do is just give a big enough window. Like this is 4,851, so I'll just do 5,000. Now, what I'm not sure of is if we go over here to our lake, what file path it decided to give that. Because I kind of forgot to include one. I think we can look at bronze and see what I should have done instead. Untap draw path. Yeah, we want to provide that. Okay. No worries. So we'll just, I'll show you what this looks like. We'll delete it and then we'll do it the right way. So under raw, untapped, schema. Okay, so it just treated that as a file with no name. That's actually fine with me. So we're already halfway there. So under head, we'll use our untapped schema path. And then we'll do 5,000 for the number of bits. Let's see if this likes us. Ooh, it does not. I don't think it was quite JSON. Let's see. Okay, so I think we want to convert the schema to JSON instead. That's what I missed. And then here we don't even need to do a string. That makes a lot more sense anyway. Oh, and our number of bytes increased. It's cool. Bingo. Okay. So now, let's make sure that this works. I'd hope if it wasn't D schema. Cool. Anything else can go away. Okay, so over here we have a couple of edits to make. Let's start from the top. So we're going to bring in our new imports. We're going to bring in our new path. Now, best practice would probably be to go ahead and ensure that we have a schema here. Like if, in case for some reason it got deleted, we'd want to reinfer. I'm going to go ahead and just ingest it. But I'll go ahead and add a to-do in here. Let's see, we can check this off. But now we need to add it's always nice to remove a to-do and then immediately have to add a new one, but it's cool. So then this we can put, and then what we want to do is right here. Ingest the schema file from the data lake, and then we'll drop in the code to do that. And then we'll have this be schema instead. And this should fix our nightly job. forcing it, and then we don't need this. A little debug step. Okay, so I'm happy with this. I'm going to check it in. So that'll be live on our Git. And then since the nightly job failed, we'll probably want to go ahead and do silver too. Just make sure it runs. So really I wanted to go over here. That's fine. Okay. Turn off revision history. I'm also going to move this debug notebook out here to go with the rest of the debug notebooks. Let's go ahead and do our 07 instead, because we're not monsters. Okay, so we'll let that run, and then I want to catch myself up on what we're doing in PowerBI before we left off. I know we've only got about 5 minutes here, but I really have been looking forward to playing around with this PowerBI. I mean, the only reason that we want to have data in the first place is to like do cool stuff with it, right? Okay. Come on, PowerBI. If any of our IT is watching this, just saying. So I know I broke something in the model last time. So we don't have a relationship between beer and brewery. That just doesn't seem right. So let's look back over here. Oh, brewery isn't connected to its own fact table. Duh. If this is many to many, I'm gonna freak out. Okay, of course it is. So I could do, trying to think of how I wanted to do this. So oh yeah, we were gonna dedupe it on the brewery side. Okay. I think I have that in my notes to do in the gold zone, but let's double check. I'm just gonna do it in PowerBI for now. We'll go back and actually do it in the model later. So what this would look like, come on. You gotta be kidding me. So all of these are gonna want a new token. Because why wouldn't they? So in case anyone's forgotten, I guess I'll do it over here. I'm not going to show my token, but under user settings, you click generate new token, and then you give it a reason for creating it. So I'm going to do that. You want your lifetime to probably be 0. That might have been why mine failed, but we'll go ahead and do PowerBI 3. Why not? Because this does seem to happen a lot. And then if I recall correctly, it's just token and then this. And then magically the data should start flowing. I said magically the data should start flowing. Come on, PowerBI. I'm gonna make sure there's not some hidden authentication window or something. Always so anticlimactic. Okay. Anyway, well, this stinks. What this would look like in gold, and we've only got a second, but we could do df is equal to, or let's do df beer distinct is equal to spark.table, and we can do beer, and then maybe our cluster is just experiencing a ton of network traffic, because this shouldn't take so long to attach, and this shouldn't take long to do a basic handshake. Oh, we set this up as a SQL notebook. I don't know why I did that. Doy. There we go. So df beer, actually I'll just undo all this. And so I think before this was, I guess we can check. So 716, so if we do dot distinct instead, we should get less than 716 would be the idea. Let's verify that. Because this shouldn't have anything unique, it's just a dimension table. And it's not, it shouldn't even be a slowly changing dimension table unless like a brewery moves. There we go. So really, we would just need to save this as a table, register it to the Hive Meta Store, push it out, and our problem is solved, which makes sense. I 273 beers is probably about right. Maybe a little low, but probably about right. Okay, and this finally loaded, of course, but I've got to bounce back to my day job, but hopefully this was an enlightening session. To recap, we figured out that the Databricks PowerBI connector is definitely still a little bit in preview. I'm going to try rebooting my computer to clear the authentication cache and see if that doesn't fix the AID issue or if I can't use a token. Either way, we'll look more at that next Wednesday. And then on our Bronze Zone notebook, we discovered a schema mismatch issue between the data that was flowing from the untapped API and what we had been storing on our raw zone. So we went ahead and implemented a schema enforcement so that we're no longer doing infer schema on all of our loads. We're actually pulling in the same schema each time the data lakehouse refreshes every night. And we went ahead and implemented that. And that was, that was our session. So I'll catch you next Wednesday. And as always, feel free to leave comments in the chat about what you'd like to see or anything I forgot to address.